I want to say something to you, and I want you never to ever forget this, because it is so important for all of us. The reason nobody is ever there for you when you need them, is so you will come to understand that you are there for yourself. I hate to be so blunt, and I realize you probably have dear friends, but you have to understand that the people around you don't walk your path. In fact, you came to Earth to walk the path they couldn't. That means your family, your friends, and everyone else just don't have the kahunas that you do. You are the strong one, and you're put through trial after tribulation, abuse after insult, outrage after attack, because they can't do it. Of course, at the time, you don't realize this. But you are Earth's answer, now. People always want others to support them through tough parts of their lives. I did too. However, when push came to shove, other than occasional financial support from my mother, I didn't have anyone there for me. It would have been natural, and it was, to turn inside to myself. That had to be one of the busiest places on earth, inside my head. And I found a guide there who talked with me, helped me, and made me feel as if I wasn't alone. That guide never gave me their name until one day when I was reading a book about twin flames. That guide was Ivo. He was there long before he ever introduced himself. When I was a new driver at 16, Ivo told me to hit the brakes as my car careened off the highway during a huge thunder and rainstorm, headed towards a grove of trees. I slowed the car down before I made contact and survived, not going through the window. We didn't have shoulder belts then. All I had on was a lap belt. He was there before I even got into the car, but I didn't listen to the very strong voices that told me not to go home that night. They knew the dark ones were trying to kill me, I didn't. They were always there when my family was absent. They were. The night I was going through dark night of the soul, bawling my eyes in the bathtub, a man showed up in my mind's eye. This man looked like a Roman gladiator and carried a sword. He had laced up sandals and stood there for I don't know how long, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour? While I bawled my eyes out. Wondering who this man was, I finally saw something move on the top of his shoulder, and saw it was the top of a wing. I then realized this was an angel. I was excited and forgot about my grieving, then the angel left. When I told my friend about this, she said it was Archangel Michael, because he comes to protect people when they need it. These are the people who are there for you. You think you're alone? You're not. Not ever are you alone. They are there. You may not see them or you may not be able to talk to them, but they are there. Always. Never forget that. These are the people you walk with, light worker. These are the people who guard you when your earth friends and family fail you. You believe you should be like everyone else, have loads of friends, be popular and have a great loving family. Some of you do have these things. From my observations, many light workers walk alone. The ones that do are on a path that was created for them by them before they were born on earth. Like I said, you feel alone because nobody on earth wants to walk your path with you, they're not up to it. You came here to do the hard craft, folks. That's the way it is. Help is on the inside, not on the outside. I had no help as I tried to live off so little money in a big city, living with a narcissistic bipolar drunk and crack addict. I thought I didn't have help anyway. I was in the habit of running to the coffee shop I worked at and sleeping in the apartment in the basement or on the coffee shop couch every time my roomie became manic and abusive. I'd stay for maybe a week and then I'd go back. And of course he was back to normal again, so it was no big deal. How did I get help? I walked off that job after an argument with my boss. That's how I got help. I no longer had a place to go to when Glenn was manic, and within a year of losing that job, I left Toronto and left Glenn behind. Many times we feel so sorry for people that we can't leave them. I had it all planned. I even knew I'd have to leave my furniture and many of my belongings behind. I was willing to make that sacrifice, but the one thing I didn't want to leave behind was Toronto, even though I couldn't afford it anymore. I got the help I needed, and it sure didn't look like help leaving a job, but it was what I needed to start making better decisions. I had to get away from Glenn, and my guides knew this, so they set it up. Do I have ill will over this? No, I see why it happened and what I needed to do. Before that happened, I went through dark night of the soul, 5 years of it. During that time, I never saw or heard from my family. Why? Yes, you don't learn to be so supportive of other people when you are in a dysfunctional family, that's true, but they never called or visited because they weren't the help I needed anyway. The help I was getting was in the form of Ivo and Archangel Michael, like I said. When your life is really dark, no, you're not alone. You're never ever alone. There is help there. Sometimes it takes a bit of effort to see the help you're getting. You have to be able to see it. My leaving Toronto was overdue by about 5 years because I wasn't getting anything out of being there anymore. Now that I was on a limited income, I needed to live somewhere more affordable. I sucked it up and left. I still love that city, though. Very much. If any place on earth has my heart, it's good old Tio. During my dark night of the soul, I'd fall asleep and feel feathers touching my face. People on earth will try to help you and they have good hearts, but you're here to bust the system, not to fall in line with it, so they may not be what you need. Your guides are trying to get you to listen and work with them. When I went to the 12 steps, it was very helpful. That's how I got into the habit of looking at my shadow. Had I not done that, I'm almost certain I would never have started channeling, by the way. One day I realized that I was becoming increasingly psychic. I realized I couldn't tell anyone there that because nobody wants a psychic in a meeting where people are trying to recover from debilitating shame and guilt. I had to be quiet. I couldn't tell these people who I was. I thought it was my answer, and what it turned out to be was another chapter in my life that helped but wasn't the entire puzzle revealed. You get help in all sorts of ways. Again, when I was in Toronto, I swore there were 2 places I'd never work, accountancies and law firms. Way too boring, I thought. I ended up with 2 jobs. Guess where? Yeah. If I'd stopped long enough, and that's another thing we all have to do, stop and breathe, think about things. If I'd stopped long enough, I would have seen I'd created that, and if I'd done such a good job of creating what I didn't want, then I could certainly do well at creating what I did want, couldn't I? I lost that gold nugget as I descended into dark night of the soul. Had I been able to hold on to that idea, that I am life's creator, I think my life would have been very different. Another time in Toronto, as I was increasing in telepathic ability, I was driving to the Quick Mart and a voice in my head told me to stop at the ATM. I said, no, I'll just use the machine there. The voice didn't argue. I went to the Quick Mart and their debit machine was broken, so I had to go and get cash somewhere. Another time I was waiting for the bus and the same voice told me to get a cab. I said, no, the cab will cost too much. I'll just wait for the bus. This time the voice insisted. I refused. The bus pulled up and I got in. About 5 minutes later, the driver got a phone call and then announced to the riders that he was going to go on an emergency run and would drop us off here for the next bus to pick us up. Now I'd be late and I knew it. I flagged down a cab. Help was there. It came from inside. It usually does. Not always, but it does. It's the first place I look now. One Valentine's Day, I was sitting in meditation. Suddenly I felt 2 taps on my knee. I opened my eyes and of course, nobody was there. I knew someone had tapped on my knee, but I just thought it was my grandfather, probably because he was the only person I knew that had passed on. It was Valentine's Day, clue number 1. I had been upset that my sponsor had told me to buy myself red roses on Valentine's Day. I felt like such a loser having to buy myself flowers on Valentine's Day. But I did it. I always like flowers anyway. But that's clue number 2. I was upset about being alone. Couple that with the time that I woke up one morning crying, saying, I know I'm in love with somebody that I see at night time, but I don't know who he is. I don't know how close these occurrences happened, but clearly I couldn't piece them together. Ivo is very patient. Had I clued into the help I was getting, I might have been able to figure it out. But I thought it was my grandfather. Never thinking back to voices I'd heard in my head, or for that matter, the voice I was having an ongoing dialogue with during my recovery in the 12 steps. I didn't put it together. Throughout my life, everything had been driving me to go back to Canada, and to leave Toronto. I moved to London out of my own need for adventure, and I went to Toronto for the same reason. I wanted to grow and to experience life. However, the way I chose to grow in both these cities over a span of 20 years was not the growth that they wanted me to have, so I was made to leave. I was intellectually involved, I was learning skills I needed to do this work, but wasn't living the inner life I should have been. I was too distracted by my choice of an outer life, and that had to end. I was living the matrix and it had to stop. One endeavor of mine, also in Toronto, was designing greeting cards. I was telephoned by a small greeting card manufacturer, who picked me up for lunch. I thought we were discussing business, but he had other ideas. As we ate our lunch, he refused to discuss business, only pried into my personal life to see how he could insinuate himself in it in order to extract sexual favors in return. When he stepped away to use the toilet, a loud voice in my head screamed, "You have to say something." I did. I told him off and walked out, and happily, because the subway was nearby, he couldn't follow me. I really wanted to design cards, but it was another effort that lost steam along the way. You may find this as well, when you're working on something that's not what you came here to do, it loses steam or never takes off. You may have a lot of these projects. I also stopped dating. As Ivo explains to me, you were looking for me, anyway, but I had no idea I was to find Mr. Right by going inside myself. This is not what anyone here would expect, but it's true. When he's an ET, he is to be found by going within, not looking outside of yourself. The point of this message is you may be experiencing the same thing, but you may be trying to understand it through intellect. That's not going to work. You have to be more open to intuition and the idea that there is life beyond what your eyes can see and what you can sense. Your guides want you to go through your trials, tribulations, and traumas as quickly as possible. Your intellect and belief in a physical life will slow you down. Understand that life is multidimensional and can be invisible to you, and just that there will help you to understand what's going on and to see the enormous help that you're getting. If you keep looking for help in the physical, you might not see it. It's all about expanding your mind. Another time, just after I started to channel Ivo, I was woken up at 4 a.m. by his voice. In an alarm tone, he yelled, "You are in danger." I'd gotten up and walked across the room to see a flashlight being shown in my window. With that, I walked over to the window, shut the curtains and went back to sleep. The flashlight belonged to Men in Black and they were paying me a harassment call. Apparently, I left my physical body and dealt with them in the astral plane. They have not returned, nor have any others. You may be getting celestial or extraterrestrial help without even knowing it. When I was a kid, we used to see a blond man park across the street, facing our house. He would sit in his car, doing absolutely nothing for hours. He just sat there. Ivo explained to me that he would come to raise the frequency of the area when my father was at his worst, and this was a help that was given to me by ETs that were already living on this planet. We had all kinds of theories made up about this guy, but we just knew to leave him alone for some reason. But he was ET and there to help me and my siblings through some tough times. You don't know what they're doing for you, but believe me, they're helping you. They understand how hard living on Earth can be, especially since the dark is doing its utmost to keep us down. Well, the dark has lost and is being rounded up, because we no longer need them to give us an impetus to seek higher ground. We won. My guides had a tough time getting me to leave the matrix behind. I was determined as a 30-year-old, to give it another go and to win this time. They didn't want that. I was on the wrong path. I would have done better going to an ashram in India than to go to Europe to work and travel. They tried everything they could to turn me around and get me going in the right direction, and it took having a breakdown to do it. That's how determined I can be. If you're as determined, determinedly living a life that does not include them, trust me, they're trying to get you to open up to them. I know many of you want to. Keep trying, but understand they have no inclination to deal with your ego. They are trying to connect with you at a soul level or higher. Your job is to embody your higher self in this earthly body, and they're there to assist you. Eating Mozart chocolates in Switzerland, and taking tours of the rain are fine for a while, but they'll try to change your focus, and it'll take whatever it does. Understand you have a lot of ideas that need changing, and that's because the entire Western society has been set up to keep you from realizing your true self or ascending. You have a lot of ideas to change within yourself, and they are trying to help you with that now. Ask yourself, what am I doing now that has nothing or little to do with what my heart's desire is in life? When you were a child, if you're like I was, you would gravitate to whatever it was that even remotely reminded you of your life's work. My parents made me draw and use paints, but when I had a choice, I was playing on typewriters and writing. Why? Because I'm a communicator. If your job is in healing, you may be a healer, but maybe it's time for you to study and move on from your job. We get stuck in secure positions, and they're meant to entice you to do that. But that's not the way of the light worker, I feel, who has a lot to bridge in order to do the work of your heart. Some fall in with the spiritual crowd and learn early. I didn't. I wanted to do business. Your guide's job is to move you closer to what and where you're to learn. For me, I had to move away from anywhere I could run a successful, or not, business and live more simply. Against all odds, according to my doctor, I was granted a disability pension, and this was, of course, my own doing. I had envisioned a break from working jobs long ago, I just didn't realize it would be forever. I manifested that. For the second time. The first time I had been written off on long-term disability, while I went through dark night of the soul, but the insurance company managed to harass me into taking a payout. Had that been me now, I would have fought them in court, but I was in a much more fragile state then. I manifested a lifelong break from work, not once but twice. I was meant to do this. They are guiding you, they are steering you. If you feel you have to move and are delaying it, then please don't delay it any longer. Light workers move around because their light is needed in different areas. Don't worry about what others say. If you feel you need to go, then go. You may not hear them, but they will find ways to communicate with you. Look for them. Synchronicities. Look at numbers. Look at angel number books and see what these numbers mean, especially if they repeat. I keep seeing 922 right now. This is the message for 922, and it is applicable. Hold the faith about your divine mission in life. You are qualified to fulfill this mission, and are supported in all ways. The more you trust and have faith, the better everything goes. From Doreen Virtue's Book of Angel Numbers. Is that not giving me clear direction on the next chapter of Implant Communications story? It sure is. It's telling me to trust and have faith that next year will be the year I buy my house and live together with my ET family and friends. And then we start a TV station. Does it sound wild? Yes, it does, but it says here, the more you trust and have faith, the better everything goes. That's what I needed to hear. Ask your guides to show you a number. Don't look for it. Wait till it comes to you. You'll see it. Don't worry. Or listen to messages you get from other people. They can be speaking on behalf of your guides. Maybe you're too stubborn and don't want to listen to common sense, but other people may not be, especially when they're not so attached to your decision making as you are. Telepathy is easiest, but there's a whole world of messages out there for us. Life is alive and there is so much to experience, and we're missing it all living as we do. I believe life is magic, nothing less than. That little girl who read fairy tales was onto something.